Hi, so in this video I'll be talking about what I've learned throughout the semester in 3 different areas. Let me start first with my research process. What I learned in this semester that you don't have to be an expert on a topic to carry out research in it, as long as you know what are the steps you need to follow, or the whole model you need to follow in order to do that research, starting from coming up with a general problem or general topic that you're interested enough in to carry out this research, into forming and building your research question in a way that you know when you answer this question, the answer is going to be a solution or like a solving for that problem you originally found. And moving from your research question, you'll move into hunting for your secondary sources and analyzing these sources, which I'm going to talk about in the next question. For now, I want to talk mainly about primary research. Now, when I got to primary research in this semester, I was so scared because originally I picked a topic I have absolutely no information about. I usually do research. It's just the research I do and I'm doing right now actually is like drastically different from what I chose to study. And like I'm used to do for my current research, I'm used to do experiments and build the work on them. For other research I've done before, like in the English one, I carried out surveys. And for me, that's what primary research means. It always means to go out and collect your own data and then analyze this data and come up with results. But in this class, I learned a new way of carrying out research, which is document analysis. And for me, that was a completely new way. It was beginning, it was hard. It was hard finding the documents, and even before finding the documents, it was challenging coming up with the criteria that I want to use to pick up these documents. But even the first criteria, I said I had to revise it and revise it to adjust to the documents I could find. But finally, I was able to find the perfect thing to study, which were NDA reviews. They were like raw data straight from FDA. Although they were raw data, they were summarized because it's FDA employees. They gather up everything the pharmaceutical companies have gave them, and they do a review. So it's just them collecting the data for you, and all you have to do is analyze this data. And okay, so as for the analyzing part, as soon as I set the criteria that I was going to use to carry out that analysis, it went smoothly. I just summarized the findings, I compared them. I just in the request for feedback in a bit, I'm going to show you how I only had trouble summarizing that in an understandable way for someone who hasn't read these reviews and to get the idea I want the people to get from that paper. But it was the hardest thing was getting a decisive answer out of these analyses, because I got anomalies and I got results that can be explained, or that I'm unable to explain it because I don't understand that well enough. But I learned how to formulate or how to form a good enough answer that would be a solution to my question without it being a decisive answer. My final answer, mainly my original question, of course, was I think the question is mentioned here somewhere. Okay, so my original question was how animal models are used. I couldn't get from 3 NDA reviews a detailed answer animal models is used for this and this and this. But what I did was saying that from what I read, I think they're mainly used for this, or they talked about these animal models most of the time regarding these studies, which are toxicological studies. And then what I did was I did a table comparing these toxicological studies and saying, look, it's not working for them. These toxicological studies for the animals are not giving a predictive answer, predictive values. They're not being useful in this field. And so if they're not being useful in the main thing that they're meant to do, then we need an alternative. And then that was my answer, that researchers need to go out and find other alternative. They need to start talking about it. Well, now I will definitely use these type of primary research with document analysis in my future studies. maybe right now in my current field I won't be able to do that because what we do, like I work as a research assistant, what we do is that we carry out our primary research is all experiments and synthesizing new materials, characterizing it, and like studying it. And so we are collecting our own data for now, but I think for any research endeavor that I have in the future in literature more than science fields, it would be a very helpful way of getting primary research, because not all fields you can collect your own data in, just as my case in this semester. Now the second thing I learned this semester that I want to talk about is secondary sources. As I said before, like it's a very important step of my research process. Since I was not familiar with the field I'm studying, I had to build a good background information regarding the subject, and I needed to trust my sources in the information they're telling me, and not like completely trust as if they're telling the truth. It's just trust that it's good background information, I'm on the right track. And what helped me do that was mainly the graph sheets we have to do. Like where we assessed in these graph sheets, we can see that we assessed like the currency of each source, the reliability of each source, is the author credible enough to write on this or not. All of that, like it makes me trust the information that was provided in those papers more. I learned that from those graph sheets a new way of assessing my sources. Before, I would only assess where I'm getting the article or the information from. Like for me, before, a scholarly article is definitely a trusted source. I would never answer all these questions about source to say if it's trusted or not. Like I would never consider the authority of the writer or how old is this source or any of these questions. And this graph sheet simply gives you like simple steps that you can follow, and that will help you decide eventually that yes, I want to use this source, or no, I'm going to trash this source, I can't use it because of this and this. And for that, I definitely will be using this in the future, because I said it's like provides really simple steps that makes you get to a trustworthy source. And I said before, as I said before, a trustworthy source doesn't mean that I'm taking what they're saying as the truth. In the contrary, in this semester, I learned how to transition into my primary research, starting from the gaps of my secondary sources. And what helped me find those gaps, and that gave me a way of doing that, was the critic sheet we did, where we had to answer specifically what these sources did wrong, like what the gaps they failed to cover, how there's gaps, like we had also to connect these gaps between the papers, see what is the major gap that is common between all of these papers, so we can move on from there into our primary research. And like having to answer all these questions helped me develop a better critical way of going through my sources. Like literally now, whenever I'm reading an article, I feel like I'm always looking for its gaps. It's like, I know you're there, just show yourself. And that's actually of great help for me, because as my position as a research assistant, we're required to read a lot of literature papers, and like always trying to come up with ideas that they fail to cover, and that we can carry out research on our own. And hence we have to find these gaps between this literature paper and connecting those gaps. So this work was like the most useful thing for me in this semester. The third final area I want to talk about that I learned a great deal in this semester is the process of requesting and getting feedback. The process we went through in like requesting feedback in this class is fairly new way for me. I only tried this way once before in English 1 last semester, and given it was my first time, it wasn't as efficient at this time. I ended up not taking any of the advices I was giving last semester. It was like a mess. But however, this semester, that it's the second time I'm doing it, I think I got the hang of it. I was able to get the perfect feedback, and I was actually able to use it to solve my problem. The way I was able to do that was by explaining when I requested the feedback, I explained exactly what my problem was. Like here in the introduction, for example, I had a problem transitioning from my research question, from like the BART introduction into my research question. And like I asked for that specifically in my request. If I said that only like I need feedback on my introduction, can you please help me? I think the one who gave me feedback here was Yang. I don't think Yang would have been able to help me the way he did after I specifically requested that I just need a way to transition into my research question. And like I explained to him that I like tried to rewrite it and it didn't work, so he didn't just tell me, okay, just rewrite it. No, he was able to help me, although in his feedback response you can tell that he's saying that he has similar problems, but he thinks that if I used a personal experience, even if I had none, I can just come up with one, it will help transition to my research question. And that was true. I actually used a personal experience about someone I met long time ago, and the story helped me transition from the problem that I'm proposing to the research question I need to ask. And like this also, the asking about specific part helped me throughout my whole paper. Like in my primary research, I talked before how I had trouble summarizing and like delivering the idea of my findings to my audience. And so I also asked about that specifically, that I can summarize this into an understandable visual. And like and that's why I was able to get a very beneficial response for feedback from Miss Bonnie. And like she told me, I need to summarize this so it won't look this information. I did that in a table. You need to make the audience understand what you need them to get from this table. What's the idea? Why are you summarizing all these data? And that improved my primary research a lot. And finally, also I did that for my conclusion. Like the requesting for specific part, I knew that, like for example, I knew that my secondary sources part was solid. I didn't want any feedback on it, and so I didn't ask on it. If I only sent my paper for someone and told them, can you give me a feedback on this paper, they might have like, okay, I don't think this is correct in my secondary sources, and they would have not told me anything about my conclusion, for example, and that would not have been beneficial for me. Now this way of requesting for feedback, definitely gonna use this, like starting right now in my current situation. I'm always requesting, like right now I always have to request for feedback on my manuscript, either from my coworker or my professor, and usually all I do is just send the manuscript for them. They do some revisions and they send them back to me and tell me like, you need to do this and this and this. And most of the time I'm very disappointed because they just give me feedback on parts I thought it was good, and the parts I'm not confident about, they don't give me feedback on them. But now I'm gonna start using this way. I'm gonna leave notes in there saying to my professor or my coworker or whoever giving me the feedback, like, I'm not confident about this part, what do you think about this? Like, I tried this and my problem is that. And that's very useful for me. So that pretty much covers what I want to talk about today. Thank you.